Greens candidate for Yerrabi.
Yerrabi.
She spent most of her career in the community sector running local services and refuges for women, including 5 years managing the Canberra Rape Crisis Centre. For the past 5 years, she has worked in the ACT government, including as manager for the Office of Women and gender advisor to the National Disability Insurance Scheme Task Force. Her work with women has been recognised with the Telstra Business Woman of the Year Award, and in 2011 she was nominated for the Australian of the Year and was also included in the 100 Canberra Women of Influence for the centenary year. So let's welcome her.
Thank you for that warm welcome. First thing I'd like to do, of course, is acknowledge that we are on the land of the traditional custodians of this region, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to them, to their elders past and present, and acknowledge their ongoing contributions to our community today. I'd like to thank you for your words, Helen, as always. Very informative and inspiring. I think I'm going to be fighting with this microphone. And thank you, Mohammed, and to Forum Australia for inviting me to speak. I thought I would start today by talking about the fact that my parents came to this country by boat. They came 60 years ago on a 2.5-month journey from Europe with small children. My mother was pregnant. And I often think back and think what an amazingly courageous thing that must have been to do. To pick up your whole life, to disconnect from your family, from your supports, from everything that you're familiar with, from your language, and try and resettle in a land where you hope that you provide better opportunity for your children. I'm certainly very pleased that my parents did make that decision, because I do believe that we live in the land of opportunity, and I'm very grateful. But I then think about those who are fleeing now, who are seeking asylum and fleeing persecution, and who are in fear of their lives. And I just cannot imagine what that must feel like. I just think it must be one of the most traumatic situations you could find yourself in. I wanted to refer today to the work of Juan Mendez, who is the Special Rapporteur for the Human Rights Council to Geneva. Last year, he handed down a report that found that Australia and Australia's indefinite detention of asylum seekers on Manus Island and the harsh conditions in our detention camps and our failure to protect vulnerable people amount to breaches of the Convention Against Torture. This barely registered in the news at the time, and it's extraordinary to think that today Australia is responsible for torturing people. I was really pleased today to hear that Papua New Guinea came with the finding that it's illegal to mandatorily detain those on Manus Islands. I also heard, unfortunately on the radio, Peter Dutton's remark that it would not change Australia's policy. I feel at many times ashamed to be Australian in regard to these issues. Nationally, both major parties support punitive measures that they say stem the arrival of the boat people. Neither have given the public an accurate and honest explanation. Instead, people are given false statements and gross sensationalism by former Immigration Minister Scott Morrison and now by Peter Dutton. The debate about asylum seekers was poisoned from the beginning by the Howard government, which spoke ominously about border control and referred to boat people as illegals and queue jumpers. This implies that boat people were a risk to our community and that they committed an offence by coming here. It was and still is a deliberate attempt to scare the average Australian into believing that those who seek asylum are a threat to this nation. The reality is that asylum seekers do not commit any offence, as Helen has said. Under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, every person has the right to seek asylum in any country that they can reach. It is a dismal reflection of the state of politics where Mr Dutton frequently refers to asylum seekers arriving by boat as illegals, because he knows damn well they are not illegals. Even in the European Union, they are being referred to as migrants. And as for queue jumping, well, there is no queue. And as Julian Burnside recently said, you know, the etiquette of checkout at Coles is hardly how it works when you're running for your life. Border protection is another misleading term. It implies that boat people are a threat to us. They are not. We do not need to be protected from asylum seekers. Asylum seekers need to be protected from persecutors. Of course, border control is a legitimate concern. But, you know, some 4 million people arrive in Australia each year by orthodox means. They come for business or holidays or study. If 25,000 a year arrived without authority seeking asylum, it is absurd to suggest that we've lost control of our borders. That amounts to, so even with arrivals at their highest levels, 25,000 unauthorised arrivals per year means that the border control is effective in 99.3% of cases. It's a very good rate by international standards. Many commentators have asked why asylum seekers simply do not stay in a transit country, such as Indonesia. Australia has signed the Refugee Convention, but Indonesia has not. Asylum seekers who get to Indonesia live in perpetual fear of detection. In Indonesia, asylum seekers who are assessed as refugees may wait 20 or even 30 years before they're offered a place in a third country. In the meantime, they're unable to work and their children are deprived of an education. Not surprising, it's absolutely not surprising that some of them take the chance with a people smuggler to come to Australia by boat. Mr Dutton often says, well, they should wait their turn. But what would you do? If you and your family face persecution at the hands of the Taliban, would you wait in Kabul for a bullet? Or hide in Indonesia for years on end, waiting for another country to offer you protection? Or would you run for your life and do whatever it took to get you and your family to safety? Most of us would want to get to safety. And if we got to a convention country, we would ask for protection. Why further punish an already vulnerable minority for their actions when those same actions simply reflect our shared sense of humanity and our fierce instinct for survival? And can you imagine if you're lesbian, gay or transgender and you're seeking asylum? It is still a death sentence in 6 countries in the world if you are lesbian, gay or gay. And in 78 countries, it is still illegal to be a gay or lesbian person. Can you imagine what it must be like to live in a society that persecutes you for being who you are? Where you have to live in the closet for fear of death or imprisonment? How do you even claim that you are fleeing persecution without coming out and putting yourself in danger? In these nations, it's not just the state from whom you fear persecution. It's your neighbour, it's your colleagues, it's your family. And what are we doing? We are mandatorily locking them up in Nauru and on Manus Island, where in both places it is illegal to be gay and you face a 14-year prison sentence. And add to that the fact that you are locked up with the very people that are persecuting you. So, what should we do to protect refugees and with people who arrive here by boat seeking asylum? Of course, there are many groups and organisations working to support refugees and asylum seekers, and there are many campaigns supporting refugees. But it's not enough. It's not enough to just declare Canberra a refugee welcome zone, although I believe that the safe haven zone might be a bit better than Yvette referred to earlier. But we need to take on the policies of the federal government and the opposition, and we need to create a safe way for people to seek asylum in Australia. Australia, and we need to give people a better opinion, or a better option, than a boat journey. We need to treat them humanely. Earlier this month, my federal colleagues, Richard Di Natale and Senator Hanson-Young, released their plan to assist more refugees and create safer pathways for asylum seekers. There are 7 parts to that plan. The first is that children don't belong in detention. The Greens' plan would remove all children and their families from detention immediately, including those in offshore detention and on Nauru. The second is that Australia needs to pull its weight in regional and global solutions. We would give $500 million to assessment and support organisations in our region to speed up the process. The third is that people should be allowed to participate in our community. Many community organisations in Canberra tell us stories of people unable to work, or unable to get an income, or unable to find housing, and it's a vicious circle. But our plan would give those seeking asylum access to education and work rights whilst they're being assessed. The fourth is that people who are seeking asylum need certainty. The Greens would abolish temporary protection visas and provide permanent protection to people seeking safety. The fifth is that we can process people without violating their human rights. The Greens believe it is reasonable that unauthorised arrivals should be detained initially for preliminary health checks and security checks, but that detention should be capped at 1 month. After that, whilst their refugee status is being determined, they should be released into the community on conditions that will ensure that they will remain available for processing and, if necessary, removal if they're not eligible. We can settle more refugees. That is our 6th point. We could provide safety for 50,000 people, which would be an increase from the 13,000+ that Ellen referred to. We would fairly and efficiently assess people's refugee claims where they were waiting and establish a skilled refugee visa program for 10,000 people. And finally, the Greens would save $2.9 million by simply closing down Manus Island and Nauru and abolishing the practice of offshore detention. I'm proud of our plan. That's why I'm Green. It's decent, it's humane, and much less expensive than the present approach. And it doesn't damage people by subjecting them to the mental trauma of not knowing when their indefinite detention will end, making their transition to becoming productive members of our society, if and when they're determined to be overprotection, much easier. Australia has led a bold and ambitious regional solution like this before. After the Vietnam War, and under the leadership of former Liberal Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser, we resettled tens of thousands of Vietnamese people who have come and gone on to strengthen the Australian community and economy. They have made our culture rich, diverse and dynamic. We can do it again. We can treat people the way that we would want to be treated, while saving lives in our region and enriching our community and our nation. And I look forward to the day that here in Canberra we can be welcoming thousands of refugees and asylum seekers.
Thank you, Veronica, for such a great coverage of the issue itself and expressing very eloquently outside Green's views onto the issue. It would have been great if Julia Jones was here, and we could have had views from Liberal side also. But, you know, but that's fine, and anything can happen with anyone, and of course if there was a health problem, then of course there is no problem. But we certainly will pull our weight as far as this forum is concerned, and you are such a wonderful addition today. I'm really impressed with what you said.